All right, so welcome to class. This is going to be about 90 minutes, like I mentioned. We're going to talk about hormones and in the wellness industry and how this actually needs to be something you focus on. And then the last half of your class this morning is going to be oncology aesthetics. So I'm going to dive into hormones. I'm going to do a little bit of comparison chart stuff for y'all too if I've got time. And your teachers are going to hand you your little handouts. So make sure you have them. I'm going to check your notes. All right, so let's make sure everybody kind of understands, first of all, what the hormone and the endocrine system is all about, okay? So when you're treating skin, everybody in here is an esthetician, needs to take this probably the most seriously, because if you want to be an acne specialist, if you want to be a a hyperpigmentation fixer, if you want to help people with their hyperpigmentation, you really need to understand a baseline knowledge of hormones and how all this works, because you need to be able to explain to them, well, hey, this could be this could be that. Let's make sure we test you and make sure that your provider, your endocrinologist or your OBGYN or whoever it is really helps you dive into that. What I would hate to do if I were you is to have someone spend dollars with you and then you really can't help them because you never discuss the underlying causes. So this really teaches you about underlying causes. So we're going to talk about the endocrine system. Let's look and see what the endocrine system is all about, all right? So it says here, and just follow along with me, and then I'm going to elaborate on some of these points, okay? The endocrine system is a chemical messenger system consisting of hormones. If y'all will underline hormones for me. Okay, is the group of glands of an organism that secrete those hormones directly into the circulatory system. If you'll circle circulatory system, folks, and write down that that is, of course, the bloodstream. We're going to talk today about the pituitary gland and how that relates to your thymus gland, your thyroid, your parathyroid, your pancreas, your ovaries, all the different glands. And so hormones actually travel from way up here to way down here. And that is a long journey. But in the midst of that comes a couple of other skin conditions, ailments, energy level issues, all sorts of stuff that we're going to dive into. So the circulatory system, the bloodstream, is how it gets there. Okay, then it says, let's see, to regulate the function of distant target organs and the feedback loops which modulate hormone release so that homeostasis is maintained. Okay, so make sure you've underlined the word hormones. Make sure you've circled the word circulatory system, and I'm going to check your notes, so make sure y'all are making notes. And then underline or circle homeostasis, and I want to tell you what that means. Okay, homeostasis means that your body and your cells are in alignment. Okay, your body and your cells are in alignment. And is that always going to be the case? The answer is no, but that is the point. And so when we are serving clients for facials, skincare procedures, chemical peels, lasers, whatever, the idea is to make sure and hope that our clients are kind of in that homeostasis mode so that they can heal from these procedures and really get the rejuvenation that they desire. Does that make sense what I'm saying? They're not going to achieve that if they're not there. So, example for you, it could be hormonal, but it could just be other things. If I see a client that has a long list of medications, and y'all know the little old ladies that carry around their medication list in their pocketbook, and they are quick to pull that out, that is a huge problem for me personally, because then I'm thinking, well, shoot, Martha, you booked a laser treatment today, an ablative laser treatment today. I just don't know what I think about this, considering you're taking all the medications that you are. We can do this, of course, if the medical provider deems it to be appropriate, but I'm going to tell you, you're not going to heal from this as quickly. Isn't that kind of what you would say? They're not going to heal from things as quickly because their body is not in homeostasis. They're relying on a lot of medications to kind of fix certain issues, in which case that in and of itself can cause other issues. So just use your professional judgment. Sometimes as an esthetician, if y'all can write that off to the side in your notes, professional judgment. Y'all are here for 20 weeks or 30 weeks if you're an evening student. That's not a long time. You're actually kind of, in alignment with a lot of medical providers in which you're by yourself in a treatment room with people that are seeking results from you. Oftentimes you have to use professional judgment. So even though this content I'm teaching you right now is not necessarily in your textbook, don't you think it's important? to be able to at least share and just give them that acknowledgement that, hey, let's make sure this isn't a medication issue, or let's make sure this isn't a hormone issue, because I want to actually help you with your results. But otherwise, this main point of this slide is making sure that clients understand that ultimately they need to be in homeostasis, meaning their cells are in alignment, everything is good to go for the most part, because they'll heal better from most things that you are doing. Okay. Next page for you. All right. Let's look at the endocrine glands. We're going to compare them to exocrine glands. So if you will write down or underline endo, E-N-D-O, and then exo, E-X-O. Okay. Endo means inside of. Exo means outside of, right? So we're going to compare something that you don't see with something you can see. And this to me was kind of a big turning point when I was first learning this information. I just thought, oh, that makes sense. So we're going to compare these two so you can actually visualize what the endocrine system looks like inside your body. So here's what it says. Endocrine glands are glands of the endocrine system that secrete their products, specifically hormones, directly into the blood. We mentioned that earlier, rather than through a duct. The major glands of the endocrine system include, and these are the ones I'm going to teach you about today, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, the pancreas, the ovaries, the testes, of course, if you're male or female, and then the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the hypothalamus, and your adrenal glands actually being the most important one that I think y'all will find interesting today. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland are neuroendocrine organs, meaning they're in the brain. Okay, they're in your head. So we're going to talk about these. If y'all went to a job interview and you spewed off that you knew what all these glands did and how this actually relates to skincare, I mean, an employer would just be mind blown. And oftentimes that's exactly what happens. I just got a message from Maddie, who's in Hilton Head. She works over there. She said, well, Courtney, I just got this other job at another medical spa because 19 years old, she got a great job coming out of aesthetics here, and advanced aesthetics went straight into this position. Now she's kind of upgraded to another position, but she said, I just told them everything I learned in school, and I got the job immediately and upgraded. And my God, she's only 20 years old at this point, not even 21, and making a great salary with benefits and based on what she knows. So sometimes, when we're talking in these Wee Wednesdays, y'all are going to think, well, when am I going to use this information, or why does this matter? Because it's not going to be on our test that I'm taking in class, right? It does matter, because this is the stuff that I want y'all to take with you when you go for these job interviews. It's good stuff to know. Okay, so we're going to talk about those, and I'm going to teach you about it. And really, every time I teach this lecture, it's like a self thing where you really look inside yourself and think, well, what's going on with me? How am I feeling? Because if you're a woman sitting here right now and you give birth to humans, this is all very meaningful to all of you, and you'll see how this relates to skin for sure. Okie doke. So when you're thinking endocrine glands, those are inside your body. If you can't see it, then what does it matter? I want y'all to imagine the comparison here. So let's look at the exocrine glands. Go to that page for me. The exocrine glands are glands that produce and secrete substances onto, and here's a vocabulary word for you, onto an epithelial surface. If you will underline epithelial surface, epithelial surface just means your skin. So if you actually take an exam, and you will, if your epithelial tissue is your skin, your integumentary is also your skin. So these are good vocabulary terms to make sure you know, okay? By way of a duct. Examples of exocrine glands include, if you'll underline some of these, because you can envision these, okay? Sweat, salivary glands like your saliva, mammary glands, ceruminous glands, lacrimal glands, sebaceous glands. If you will underline or circle sebaceous glands and write down next to it that it's your oil glands. Okay, sebaceous glands are your oil glands. And then your mucous membranes. So all of this we imagine and we can see. So if you have saliva, you can see it. It's like a clear liquid, right? If you've got sweat, you can see that. It's a clear liquid. If you have oil glands and you're excessively oily, in your T-zone area, Lordy day, we can see that too. That's a clear liquid. So I want you to imagine that same clear liquid inside your body, going from your pituitary all the way to your ovaries. Okay, so imagine that. We're going to talk about a couple of disorders in which case y'all will be feeling like, wow, I have actually dealt with that, or I know someone with these issues. We're going to talk about those. Okay. So this next page for you is just a vocabulary term. So these you do need to know for your state board exam. So your sebaceous glands are your oil glands, right? And your sudoriferous glands are your sweat glands. So don't get those confused. They're both S words. I want to make sure you get them right on your exams. Make sure you remember those, your sweat glands and your oil glands. Okay. All right. Every time I show this picture, I always think this looks ridiculous because I know what this looks like to you, but that is actually what your pituitary gland looks like. So we're going to talk about that first. We're going to begin at the top and we're going to go all the way down to your ovaries or testes, and here's what it is, okay? Your pituitary gland is the most important one. I'm going to read this and then we're going to talk about it. So underline some things for me. Your pituitary gland, located at the base of your brain, secretes something known as trophic hormones. Circle trophic hormones. That's a big term. You're going to see this a lot, trophic hormones. So pretty much how your brain operates every other part of your body, your trophic hormones in your pituitary gland do also, okay? And you'll see why this is important. All right, then it says the pituitary gland is the command center, so to speak, right, of the endocrine system. Several important trophic hormones are secreted from the pituitary gland and make their way to the ovaries in females, which are both extremely important for ovulation and childbirth. So on the next page, we're going to talk about types of trophic hormones. And this is going to answer so many questions for you, and we hadn't even gotten halfway into the lecture yet, but this is going to be meaningful for so many of you. So let's look at these. On the screen, you're going to notice these different types of hormones. If you will write down at the top that these are all trophic hormones. Trophic hormones, okay? Number one is follicle stimulating hormone, also known as FSH, is secreted by the pituitary and essentially plants the seeds involved in ovulation during puberty and beyond. So without even moving any further, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, you've got to be able to have that work appropriately. Many women in specifics actually don't realize until they get of age to have a cycle and have children and all this kind of stuff. They realize, well, gosh, maybe my FSH isn't working properly. You probably don't even know you have it because your OBGYN does not share this kind of information with you and doesn't educate you on it. So what can happen if you don't have enough FSH is you could actually just open little sacs in your ovaries because it's planting the seed. So it sends little air sacs into your ovaries. If there's air sacs there and then no LH, which I'm fixing to talk about, you can end up getting ovarian cysts that can occur. Also, you could also get some ruptures as well. Has anybody ever had an ovarian cyst that has ruptured? Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. This is very meaningful and very difficult to deal with, and many of your clients will deal with this kind of stuff. They might not even know that it's called follicle stimulating hormone that actually causes ovarian cysts. So keep that in mind. So put number one next to FSH, number one. Then I want you to put number two next to the next one, luteinizing hormone, also known as LH. Put a number two next to that one. Okay, is another very important trophic hormone that is needed to actually release the egg from the ovum in order to have children. And all of this is going to relate to skincare in just a minute. You're going to hear what I have to say about it. But if you do not have FSH and LH working synergistically together, there's going to be a problem. Okay, so a couple different things. If you truly have something known, ladies and gentlemen, as polycystic ovarian syndrome, that's usually where FSH has been in overdrive. So you have a lot of air sacs, a lot of pockets in your ovaries, okay, which can cause cysts for sure. But then you generally don't have enough LH to actually fuel it to release the eggs. So what can happen is a couple of things. True PCOS is paired with a lot of cysts, a lot of pain. Potentially ovarian cancer could come out of that. And then also the unfortunate aspect of not being able to have children. Okay, so that's a big thing for females, and you're going to run into clients that deal with this all the time. But LH needs to happen in order for women to have children. So, what I want you to write down, because you'll see this later in the slideshow, but this is relevant now. And you can write it on the slide. If somebody has PCOS, which is really the deregulation of these two trophic hormones, polycystic ovarian syndrome, they're going to have a couple of skin conditions, okay? They're going to have a couple of skin conditions. What happens when you have these hormones out of whack, which means they're not in homeostasis, right? They're most certainly not in homeostasis. What's going to happen is they're going to have three characteristics that happen. Number one, they're going to have something known as hirsutism. Hirsutism is hormonal hair growth on the upper lip, chin, and sometimes chest. How many ladies in here have had the little chinny chin chin hairs or the upper lip hairs that are dark, thick, and that sort of a thing? I have one little hair I'm still trying to get with laser. I'm almost there. I'm going to get it, right? And that really helps, but you can't do anything about it if it's not going to be regulated by your hormones. It'll go away, but couldn't another little hair come up next to it because you didn't regulate your hormones? So that's another big thing that I teach my advanced students. If we do laser hair removal on hirsutism, hormonal hair growth, they have to understand they've got to get their hormones under control, otherwise it will come back. So people just really need to understand this information when they're spending dollars with you, right? So as a review, just make sure you remember that these are trophic hormones y'all learned on this slide. You've got follicle stimulating hormone that plants the seeds. You've got luteinizing hormone that releases the egg. They need to work synergistically together, right, in order to actually function appropriately. When they don't function appropriately, you're going to have something known as polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. And y'all tell me, what are those three skin characteristics you're going to see? I didn't even get to the third, did I? I stopped with hirsutism. So let's start with what's the first one? I just said it. Hirsutism, which is hormonal hair growth. That's number one. Number two, the second one is splotchy hormonal hyperpigmentation. You have to write down the word splotchy. Splotchy hormonal hyperpigmentation. So what that's going to look like is more paint splatter. It's not going to be freckles. You'll understand what I'm saying? So it's going to be more paint splatter looking splotchy hyperpigmentation. You're going to notice that on the cheeks. You're going to possibly notice it on the neck too. Some folks can get that on the neck in kind of little red patches. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of brownish patches on the cheeks. Okay. Third thing is cystic jawline acne, only on the jawline. So every single time I see a client come in and they have the cystic jawline acne that's painful. I mean, how many of you have ever had a cyst before? You know what I'm talking about. They're painful and they're deep. Okay, you can take a Lancet, by the way, everybody in here, find the center of it, find a Jesner peel, okay? A salicylic will be fine too, but Jesner's even better because it's an AHA-BHA blend, and you can actually cauterize it once you open it up with the little Lancet. Take a Q-tip and the Jesner and just kind of singe it right on there. Instead of trying to force it out by extraction, you can actually dry it up inside the pore that way. Excuse me. So just keep in mind that cysts are something you can deal with, but if you extract it, you could cause an eruption. You could actually break open the skin. So how do you treat a cyst? You're going to take a Lancet, feel for the center, kind of poke it, open it up, put that in the sharps container, take a Q-tip and some Jesner solution, and then cauterize it, and it should dry up on its own up underneath. But again, if they don't treat the underlying hormonal issues, then they're most certainly going to keep having these problems come up. Okay, this little story I tell every single time. So sophomores, you may have heard it. Scoop myself up here. This is kind of where hypotheses come into place and where you all cannot diagnose, but you can most certainly have a hypothesis. So write that down. Y'all can have an educated guess. You can have an educated guess. You cannot diagnose. So, great story for this because this leads into hormones, but it wasn't exactly hormones. So this is kind of where your knowledge, your professional judgment comes into play. So back when I first moved the school from Sumter to Columbia, this was 2014 or so, I had a student who was a beautiful young lady. She came into the school. She is a fitness instructor, taught some fitness classes. Her husband is in bodybuilding, whatever, her fiance, not a husband. So she's bringing the husband or fiance in for back facials where we do extractions, because y'all know we like extractions here. This is good. So here I am, because I'm teaching her class. So we're doing extractions. And I'm looking at them, and I always say this because it's so true, and y'all can imagine this yourselves. If you ever see someone that has a tiny head but big muscles, you know, they totally are on black market steroids to, you know, get the muscle building going on. So I'm identifying that about him, but I don't want to make any assumptions, right? But what I do know, based on my knowledge, is that people that are on steroids end up having a lot of body acne. So y'all may want to write that down. Y'all may end up having men as your clients, you know, and if they're on steroids, and that's not to say it's just men, it could be women too. If people that do bodybuilding and they're doing that, they end up getting a lot of body acne. So we're doing these extractions, having the best little time. But I pull my student, the girl, aside, and I said, okay, hey, I said, I need you to tell me if he's taking steroids, because it's really none of my business, but I just want to know that, because if he is, then we cannot have him back. Because if we continue to do extractions, it's just going to continue to fill back up. It's going to get more and more issues, right? It's just not going to stop the problem. So that's what I'm saying. Y'all got to figure out the root of what's going on. Otherwise, you can actually cause more harm than good. Okay, so story's not over. That was half of it. So she says, no, 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 he's not doing that. And I said, okay, all right, whatever you say. So she starts coming in a couple weeks later, and all of a sudden, she's getting cystic acne in her mid-face, which is pretty unusual for hormone stuff. Because what did I just say? That hormonal acne is usually where? On the jawline. And so I know her very well, much like we know you. We get to know you, your eating habits, kind of what you're doing, your treatments, because you're getting treatments done here at the school. You're using all the skincare products. You're doing all the things. And I know how healthy she is. I know the food she's eating because I watch her eat all the plant-based stuff she brings into the school. Everything's good. And she's getting all the services done, okay? So she's crying her eyes out. Courtney, help me with this, you know, cystic acne in my mid-face. What do I do? And I said, well, let's get your hormones tested, because of course that's my first line of thought. Hormone testing. Go see if you have testosterone in your bloodstream by chance, okay? Because that's what I'm fixing to teach you guys, is you can have some excessive levels of testosterone that can sometimes cause some of this acne stuff. So that's first line of thought. She comes back from her blood test that I sent her to go get done, and everything was fine. I said, okay, well, we'll continue forward and see what's going on. She comes back the next week, and thank you, teachers, for bringing the handouts. There you go. She comes back the next week and she says, oh my gosh, you know, tears rolling down her eyes. It's getting worse, getting worse, getting worse. She said, please help me. And y'all going to have clients like that too, that come to you in tears, right? And they're just begging for help. They don't know what to do. The doctors can't assist them with their skincare, you know, needs. And I said, well, I'm going to come up with a hypothesis. I'm going to come up with a hypothesis, an educated guess, right? And I said, well, I need you to be honest with me, first of all. I said, you know, is your fiance taking steroids? And she said, yes, he is. I said, okay, thank you. I said, all right, well, are you having unprotected sex with this guy? Are you sleeping on his chest at night, possibly, where there's sweat, you know, and things like that? She said, yes and yes. I said, okay. I said, what I want you to do now, because of course I'm not diagnosing, I'm coming up with an educated guess. I said, well, please go to the doctor, and now I want you to get your blood tested for steroids in your system. And what do you think came back positive? Yes. So, and this was after she had gone to the doctor and tried to figure all this kind of stuff out. So my point is, you know, sometimes your clients will feel so comfortable with only you. You know, you're going to be the person to help them figure this out. You're going to understand what they're using. You're going to understand their lifestyle. You're going to kind of understand the ins and outs, because they're going to tell you all their personal stuff anyways. You're going to know a lot about them. So you can help them come up with an educated guess and then send them to the correct medical provider for testing to make sure that that is the case or not. So that is just one of those things where this information is important, because it helps you come up with good educated guesses. All right, so we talked about those. Trophic hormones. All right. Next one. This is very important. So not only remember those 3 skincare conditions you can have with hormonal anything is going to be the hirsutism. We said that, the hormonal hair growth, the cystic jawline acne, and the splotchy hormonal hyperpigmentation. This particular trophic hormone, so right at the top of this page, okay, where it says MSH, write down trophic hormone also. This is also a trophic hormone that comes from the pituitary gland. So let's read it and then we're going to talk about it. Because the pituitary gland also secretes MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. Please underline or circle that one. MSH. This is huge. This is huge. From its intermediate lobe. It's exceptionally important for estheticians to understand the connection with the possible loss or disconnection, rather, of any trophic hormones that actually need to occur in females. If any trophic hormones released by the pituitary are not functioning properly or sometimes not at all due to genetic predispositions or health issues, the skin can be a target to overstimulation of melanocytes or hyperpigmentation. Okay. One of these days, I'm going to bring me a little whiteboard up here because in this moment, I would love to write down the term melanogenesis. Okay. Write down melanogenesis. It's actually, said as melanogenesis. Melanogenesis. When you have any kind of skin conditions in which hyperpigmentation is coming to light. Okay, you've learned a couple of things in school so far, but one that you probably haven't learned until this very moment is melanocyte stimulating hormone from the pituitary gland. So number one, where do you get melanogenesis? You get it from the sun. So write down UV rays. That's going to be the first line of thought when you think of hyperpigmentation. Where's this coming from? UV rays. Okay. Number two, it could be PIHP, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So melanogenesis number two, PIHP, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Where do you get post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation? Some of y'all may not have heard that term before. Have y'all ever picked at your skin and then all of a sudden you see what is a scar paired with hyperpigmentation? That's PIHP, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Write down that it is a scar plus hyperpigmentation, HP for short. And it's coming from picking, the act of picking oftentimes. Also, PIHP can come from treatments you do that are too aggressive on a client. This is why when we're performing lasers or microneedling or whatever, Lordy day, if you go too deep on someone, you could accidentally cause post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. So making sure settings are appropriate, making sure you're not over-processing the skin. Chemical peels that you all do could absolutely do that. That's why we teach you how to build people up to certain things, right? And then number three, for melanogenesis, okay, is going to be MSH from the pituitary gland. I would love to see all of you. Now, I'm teaching a marketing class on Friday morning in my office. If anybody wants to come, just, go to the front desk and you can book that. But I want you to make sure you have an LLC or are in the process of getting one in order to attend that class. Okay, so marketing. What I would love to see y'all do for marketing, so this is a trick or a tip for you right now. You could take some of this information, you could get online right here, right now and say, do you know that a lot of your hormonal hyperpigmentation actually comes from MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone, from the intermediate lobe of your pituitary gland? Did you know that? Y'all have got to flex your knowledge a little bit to your audience. Do y'all realize you've got to do that? If you're not your best cheerleader in this career field, then nobody else is going to be. So share some of this amazing knowledge. If you share it now while it's fresh, then there it is. It's out there. It's out there to everybody. So that's a big one. So we said melanogenesis is going to come from UV rays and UV damage from the sun. Number two, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, PIHP. And number three, MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone from your pituitary gland, okay? In which case, you are not in homeostasis, so we want to make sure people are. Oftentimes, and I'm not perfect and nobody is, but I make myself drink my greens every day. I don't have time to eat a bunch of vegetables. You know what I'm saying? So whatever I can do to throw in nutrition for my cells so I can work on my own hormones as I approach 40 years old, then that's what I'm going to do. So these are some things you've got to work on for yourself. When you work on it for yourself, you will share it with your clients. Do y'all think about stuff like that? Aesthetics and going into cosmetology and nails, everything nowadays is really about the synergistic combination of wellness. And y'all have got to practice what you preach. So think about that today for me. All right, next page. So many of y'all are actually familiar with the thyroid gland, but we're going to talk about it a little bit just to make sure you do understand it. Because some people might come in to see you, they're filling out their intake forms, they're filling out their consent forms, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, well, I'm hyperthyroid, I'm hypothyroid. I could have the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We're going to talk about some of these things, and you want to kind of understand what this is. So let's read it together. Hormones secreted by the thyroid gland help control growth and metabolism. So underline that. Help control growth and metabolism. Okay. So some individuals that do have growth stunted that's not DNA specific, sometimes that's a thyroid issue. Okay. Metabolism. Lordy, I need all the energy that I can possibly muster every single day. I need my metabolism to be working really, really well. That comes from your mitochondria and your cells, but ultimately from your thyroid functioning properly too. So growth and metabolism are where the thyroid really focuses on. So this is the job of the thyroid gland, located in the neck and consisting of two lobes. The primary influence of the thyroid is the regulation of the body's metabolic rate or energy levels. We said that one. And then the next one's really important too. I want you to underline this. Along with the body's capacity to synthesize proteins. That's a huge deal. If you cannot synthesize proteins, meaning use them to fuel your cells for your health, then that's a huge problem. And I don't think many people understand that the thyroid actually does that. So in your cells, if we're getting really teeny tiny with it, your cells, you've got something known as organelles. Y'all are probably familiar with the nucleus, which is kind of the brain of the operation in your cells. But then you have other things, your mitochondria for your energy levels. It actually has your adenosine triphosphate, your energy packets. And there's some other ones, but there's a really important one, if y'all write this off to the side note, known as the ribosomes. Ribosomes, ribosomes, ribosomes. Ribosomes in your cells actually are supposed to create proteins for you to use for many functions, but for actual benefit of your hormones. Okay, so ribosomes in your cells actually produce proteins you can use later to manufacture good hormones. If you don't have a good capacity to synthesize those proteins, then your cells are not going to survive. Every cell in your body has to produce ribosome components and has to utilize them. Okay, and we understand how important proteins are in our body. In fact, our cells' hydration in our skin. Remember, you've got something known as proteoglycans in your dermis. Specifically, a type of proteoglycan is a glycosaminoglycan. Glycosaminoglycans in your skin produce hyaluronic acid. So if you've got someone, let's kind of even pull this out a little bit. If you've got someone with exceptionally dry skin, you know what one of my first questions might be? Because I love this information. Do you have any thyroid issues? Because if you can't synthesize proteins, then your natural proteins in the dermis of your skin are not going to produce internal hydration. And that's not to say that they would always have a thyroid issue. It could be more DNA. Some people are more anhydrous, meaning without water. They're more drier skin due to DNA. But some people can be unnaturally dry. And sometimes it can actually be an endocrine system issue. Isn't that interesting? So just think about that. Moving on to the next one. The thyroid must function at its most healthiest state as it produces the hormone calcitonin, which plays a large role in calcium homeostasis. So there's another benefit to the thyroid. Underline calcium homeostasis. That means that your body can actually use calcium to regulate homeostasis, meaning everything is in alignment and everything is good to go. So, if you are not able to utilize calcium, are you going to be able to have strong bones? Probably not. Are you going to be more prone to bone breaks? Absolutely. So I would say for more of the elderly community or individuals trying to get up there and they're kind of wondering, how do I prevent falls? I would say get your hormones tested. See where you are with your thyroid gland, because if you're unable to process calcium and utilize it for bone health, then no matter what you do, you might just end up breaking bones unnaturally. So those are some things to think about there. Good information so far? Yes. Okay. So this goes on to mention calcium regulation is important for bone health, among other roles. All right, moving on here. This one goes into just the quick understanding that your body actually needs something known as iodine to keep your thyroid healthy. So where do you get iodine from? As I've mentioned to y'all before, I'm very hesitant these days about supplement recommendations. I used to be very heavy on supplement recommendations. Now that more and more studies are coming out about supplements, many of them don't actually produce and deliver what they say they do. Okay, I would recommend a good probiotic if anything else. Otherwise, I'd rather see y'all drink this kind of stuff to get your vitamins and nutrients in there. But in order to get iodine, you'll actually need to eat a decent amount of fish. Who in here really does not like eating fish? Is always someone, right? You can get iodine some other ways too, but fish is a good option. You can also get your omegas that way, which is great for skin health and that glow that you want to see all the time. But they are utilizing in medicine radioactive isotopes of iodine to treat thyroid cancer. So those are some big things to pay attention to. All right, next page. This is important for y'all to pay attention to because I remember seeing this on intake forms when I first got into aesthetics and just thinking, I don't know what this means. I didn't learn this in school. So that's why I wanted to make sure y'all understand this and you know this coming out of school. So if you see someone that has hyperthyroidism, it's also known as Graves' disease. If you'll underline that, make sure that those are two things that you understand are the same thing. Hyperthyroidism is Graves' disease. Then we're going to talk about hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism is also known as Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So just make sure you underline that one, put an arrow, make sure you understand that those are the same thing as well. So going back to hyperthyroidism, it occurs when the thyroid produces excessive amounts of its hormones. So excessive amounts. Hyper means excessive, so that makes sense to me. Okay. Graves' disease is the cause of hyperthyroidism with symptoms including, and don't self-diagnose yourself when we talk about all these symptoms today, but eye bulging, fast heartbeat, weight loss, poor tolerance of heat, irritability and moodiness, myxedema, which is darkened skin on the shins, and that usually is from diabetics as well, and then sleeping problems. Okay, and Damara is standing right here, and I remember, you and I were standing in my office, and one of our alumni comes walking through the door. And I took one look at her, and she's beautiful as always, but I said, oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight. She had lost a ton of weight since we had seen her. And Damara and I were just, talking to her. And she said, well, I think I actually might have cancer. I'm going to go talk to someone and see, what's going on. Because yes, it is shockingly, very quick, rapid weight loss. I said, well, don't put that out into the universe. Don't say that out loud. I said, what it could be is hyperthyroidism. Go get your thyroid checked just to make sure, because sometimes if that's the issue, that can be, regulated with medications and other lifestyle things. We can regulate that. That might not be cancer. And she called me up like within 2 days, did she not? And she said, you know what, you're right. You were right. It is hyperthyroidism and I can control that. And now she's on medication and getting better. So again, we're not diagnosing, but don't you want to share knowledge with people? Don't you want to share knowledge with people in order to help them and just say, well, this is an estimated guess. Go get this tested because I could be totally wrong. But, you want to just give people options. Cancer shouldn't be the first thing that anybody thinks of in those instances. Okay, then hypothyroidism is most often caused by Hashimoto's thyroiditis, another autoimmune disease. So all of these are what are known as autoimmune diseases, folks, but that's not to say that you can't get out of some of these issues. I do want to mention that. We're going to talk about some adrenal gland dysfunctions like Cushing's and Addison's disease, and it sounds like a lifelong issue, disease, right, syndrome. That doesn't mean it has to be lifelong, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. All right, so back to this one. What I want y'all to write down about hypothyroidism is it's going to lack sufficient amounts of thyroid hormone. So what you're not seeing here is the fact that this is going to be excessive weight gain, usually in places that you would not normally gain weight. Okay, so sometimes in your face, things like that. So this one's one of those things. But look at what it says at the bottom. If you're lacking sufficient amounts of thyroid hormone, number one, going backwards to the slide beforehand, you're going to have issues with protein synthesis. You're going to have issues with calcium. You're going to have issues with your mood, your energy levels, things like that. But look at what it says. This is where nodules and or cancer can develop. specifically with hypothyroidism. So just keep that in mind. If somebody puts this on their intake forms, I would say this is not to say you can't serve these clients, but you just want to be careful. You don't want to do any really crazy laser treatments, right? In which case they would have probably hyperpigmentation. They could post-inflammatory hyperpigment. They could heal slowly. All right, so just things to think about with some of these issues. Okay. Then the pancreas. The pancreas is a glandular organ. So you're going to know that this is a part of your organ system, which is fine, but it's also part of the endocrine system, which is interesting as well. The pancreas is a well-known glandular organ of the endocrine system that regulates insulin and assists with digestion of nutrients in the body. So other than type 1 and type 2 diabetes, which y'all are probably familiar with, I want you to understand that digestive enzymes are an important aspect of this. And most of us, if you're past the age of 20 or 21, your pancreas is probably not functioning in its optimal state, just due to living on this planet, eating the food we eat, and just exposing yourself to free radicals, right? So your pancreas can oftentimes stop actually secreting digestive enzymes. I look at my son, who totally came home yesterday and decided he wanted me to make him scrambled eggs and he wanted to eat ice cream, eggs and ice cream. That was his, thing. I'm like, whatever, okay? He can eat whatever he wants to. His stomach is totally fine because guess what? As a young child, you're cranking out digestive enzymes. By a raise of hands, how many people have stomach issues now as an adult? And all of a sudden you can't eat what you used to eat. Your digestive enzymes slow down. You have to understand that that's just part of, being an adult. It's part of life. But other things that can happen with that, other than your pancreas kind of slowing down there, is it's going to wreak havoc on your small intestine. So oftentimes if you have pancreatic issues that are not diabetes, because most of us don't necessarily have diabetes, you could have a lack of digestive enzymes, which then turns into things like heartburn. Who in here has heartburn or knows someone that has heartburn? Yeah, my husband gets heartburn, so I'm always telling him, you got to take your digestive enzymes, right? That is another supplement you actually can take, a digestive enzyme supplement to help you kind of break down your food. So between digestive enzymes and probiotics, those are my only go-tos for supplements. But when it comes to small intestine stuff, I want you to just write these things down. Your clients could have issues with, like I said, heartburn. They could have issues with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, okay? And they could have issues, which IBS ties into going to the bathroom, not to talk about gross stuff, but if you are not going every day, that's a problem. Or if you're going too much. Some people go too much and you almost are just food's going through you. Do you know that can cause, rectal cancer? All sorts of things. You've got to get your bowels under control. I know y'all really enjoy this conversation, but that's actually a thing. You need to pay attention to that. And it's probably a bigger issue for some men, but women have these issues as well. So pay attention to that. But it all begins with that pancreas, okay? Then moving on to the adrenal glands. These are some of my favorite because like I've told many of y'all, my dad had a kidney transplant. So I really enjoy understanding about the kidneys due to that. And the adrenal glands are those little yellow hats that sit on top of your kidneys. So if you have a kidney issue, or if you know someone that does, or if they've ever had to have a transplant, or if anybody's ever donated an organ like a kidney, your adrenal glands will be disrupted. And I think that's what a lot of these places like MUSC don't actually explain to donors of kidneys, is you're going to have health issues by taking out a kidney because it's going to greatly affect your adrenal glands. And so it's not a life or death thing, but it's a quality of life thing. So we're going to talk about that. The understanding of the adrenal glands is fascinating to the esthetician for many reasons. The adrenal glands look like little hats that sit on top of the kidneys and are made up of a medulla and a cortex. Okay, I'm going to tell you what to underline in just a second. The adrenal cortex produces 3 types of steroid hormones. So I want you to underline these 3. Mineralocorticoids, okay, glucocorticoids, and then androgens. We're going to talk about all 3 of these: mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and androgens. Okay, so This is so fascinating to me. I was telling this to my mother on the phone the other day, and I just spit this out like that because she's an APRN, she's a nurse anesthetist, and so she understands health from a different perspective. And then, I told her, I'm like, this is the most important thing I don't think people do understand about the endocrine system is what is going on in those adrenal glands. So the mineralocorticoids, guys, this helps to regulate blood pressure and electrolyte balance. So I'm going to tell you why this is all so aggravatingly interesting in just a minute, but underlined blood pressure. Underlying blood pressure. When do we get high blood pressure? In stressful situations. So look at this next thing, okay? Look at the next thing. A type of glucocorticoid, is the popular cortisol. Cortisol, which serves as our stress hormone. So if you wondered why your blood pressure spikes to the roof when you are in a stressful situation, this is the science regarding why. Your stress hormones are actually in the same gland as your blood pressure regulation. So can you give yourself a heart attack by being stressed out? Probably, yeah. So let's calm down right now. Calm down. Calm down. Wusa, yes. Okay, so understanding and regulating excessive stress is important for the regulation of your adrenal glands. And we are not done. Those are two things. So mineralocorticoids really regulate your electrolytes and your blood pressure, but then glucocorticoids regulate your stress levels. And I'm going to tell you why this is relevant to your skin in just a moment, but go to the next page. Okay. The third steroid hormone, so for women in here, you're going to be like, why, God? Why do you do this to me? Why? Why? The third steroid hormone, androgens, are the female's only natural source of the male hormone, testosterone. Okay, the only natural source. So this was interesting to me when I first learned it. I didn't know that testosterone was something that we actually had as women, but we do have a little bit, and it's actually supposed to be in those adrenal glands. So that's fine to a certain level. But let me ask you this question. What do you think is going to happen? It's like a seesaw. If you have your cortisol levels spiking, then your blood pressure is going to spike, and then guess what else is going to spike? Testosterone. And then look what it says. Look what it says. This fact is important for many estheticians as high testosterone levels in females cause those same characteristics to come up that I mentioned with PCOS. So this is why a lot of folks that are diagnosed with PCOS are misdiagnosed. It could actually be an adrenal gland issue because the symptoms are the same. The symptoms are the same. So what are the symptoms? So excessive hair growth on the chin and upper lip, so your Hirschsprung issues. Hyperpigmentation, so the MSH from your pituitary is turned on, you're cranking out that splotchy hormonal hyperpigmentation. And cystic jawline acne. You could have one, two, or all three of those characteristics if you have issues in your adrenal glands. So basically, did I just tell you that if you're stressed out, you can get acne? Yep. If you're stressed out, can you start growing hormonal hair growth? Isn't this fun? If you're stressed out, can you start getting splotchy hyperpigmentation out of the blue? Absolutely. And it can also greatly affect your health otherwise because it raises your blood pressure. So yay, welcome to being a woman. Yay, super fun, right? So the regulation of adrenal gland levels are imperative for proper skin health. It can be a source of understanding for those treating acne or hormonal hyperpigmentation. This is one of the many reasons why wellness, I would say, is a huge focus today and should always be. The big trend right now, I'm sure y'all are aware of, are the cold plunges. And what else? You get in the hot thing, what's that called? The sauna. The infrared saunas. So people are trying to come up with ways. I got to get it, Candace. I got to get it. They're coming up with ways to try to lower their stress levels. So think about ways that you can lower your stress levels, that you can balance your life to the best of your ability, to where you can focus on you, because y'all are fixing to serve a bunch of clients. That's your full-time job now, is serving other people. When you serve other people, guess what? You take on their energy sometimes. You have to protect your energy because I just gave you one good reason why. You've got to be able to regulate your stress levels because your health actually depends on it. Your skin depends on it, but most importantly, your health for sure. Okay? Then the last thing that I just thought was interesting about this one is that in the adrenal glands, one other thing that happens is you have a fight or flight response. Who in here just has a fight or flight response from varying factors? The first thing that always comes to my mind is when someone slams on the brake in front of you and you have to slam on the brake. And then all of a sudden you just feel like this wave of heat come over your body. That is your fight or flight response. So that's an appropriate response. That means that you're healthy. You're able to actually deal with stress levels in life and, save yourself sometimes in those instances. But sometimes maybe you're in fight or flight if you are fixing to take a test, or you're in fight or flight if you're walking into a situation you've never walked into before. So you can see why your stress levels and really understanding your own stress levels is very important to alleviating some of those concerns so you're not constantly in fight or flight. If you're constantly in fight or flight, you're going to end up having high blood pressure, which could greatly affect your heart. And do you know that heart health is the number one thing that women specifically deal with? That's the number one killer of most females, believe it or not, is your heart issues. So just pay attention to those adrenal glands. This one's always really important, and I love talking about it every single time. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. About 15 more minutes. Y'all good to go? Okay, so let's see. Clients with Cushing's syndrome, this is one of the disorders. The disorders of the adrenal glands deal with many visual characteristics, okay, such as abnormal obesity, but with thin arms and legs, reddish stretch marks, a round red face, weak muscles and bones, acne, and fragile skin that heals poorly. So Cushing's syndrome. This one, they deal with high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, moodiness, and headaches. Cushing's syndrome is caused by excessive cortisol-like medications as one thing, such as prednisone, or a tumor that produces excessive cortisol by the adrenal glands. So for me in your notes, circle Cushing's syndrome and then underline excessive cortisol. Okay, this means your body is producing excessive amounts of adrenal hormone, so that's Cushing's syndrome. So with that, I also want to say that if you or someone you know is on prednisone for a long period of time, this can actually cause these issues. So I always say to people, please revisit that with your doctor. If you have some sort of underlying condition in which you're on long-term prednisone, I would personally suggest to try to wean off of that with the doctor's permission to some form or fashion if you can, because it's going to cause some other issues and you could end up having high blood pressure problems. If you have high blood pressure problems, again, you're going to have heart issues. So you're trading one thing for another. That's why being on prescription medication, it will fix this thing over here. It's usually going to cause this thing over here. And this is why. So just pay attention to that one. And you're going to see clients that utilize prednisone. Sometimes we're on prednisone for short-term issues. That's okay. But long-term is going to create some of these, big effects. All right. Then, clients with Addison's disease are those in which the adrenal glands do not produce enough steroid hormone. Aesthetics characteristics include darkening of the skin, so more hyperpigmentation stuff, especially in sites of friction. So like the underarms, okay? There is a condition that, of course, I can't pull that one out of my hat right now, but it's in my skin conditions slideshow. Ooh, what is it? Hidradenitis suppurativa. I got it. All right. What I believe hidradenitis suppurativa is actually a connection with Addison's disease and a sweat gland disorder. Okay, so next week I want to say that's actually what we're going to talk about in here is the skin conditions slideshow. So just hang tight on that one. But you're going to notice people with hidradenitis suppurativa is where they have darkened skin under the arms. They also have very scarred areas of the skin. And no one can help these people, supposedly. Doctors are not able to help them. If you can get your hormones under control, pay attention to Addison's disease as a possibility. Of course, get this tested. And then once you're kind of working on the resolution of the adrenal gland disorder, then we can do some laser treatments and stuff to kind of resurface those areas. Then you're good to go. Also, excessive perspiration, excessive sweating, which is hyperhidrosis. That is also paired with hidradenitis suppurativa. That one can be treated with Botox injections, believe it or not, or some sort of neurotoxin injection, and you can actually stop some of those mechanisms of action from happening. So isn't this just interesting to y'all? I'm probably saying a bunch of big words worse. But are y'all following what I'm saying? You see how all this connects to one another? I just love it. Okay. So other things with Addison's: muscle weakness, lightheadedness, sweating. There you go. Changes in mood and cravings for salt due to low sodium or other symptoms, because hyperpigmentation can be one of the most rewarding yet difficult skin conditions to treat. It's important for the esthetician to take Addison's disease into account when treating skin darkening. But I know y'all can't write that down, but just keep that in your mind. Hidradenitis suppurativa, we'll talk about that next week, and I've got some pictures for you on that one. Okay, this slide here is on polycystic ovarian syndrome specifically. And remember, this is when you actually really do not have an adrenal gland issue. What it is that dysregulation of FSH and LH from your pituitary gland. When you don't have that, here's what's going to happen. I want y'all to pay attention to the area, there it is, closer to the bottom, where it says due to and in conjunction with cysts, okay, in your ovaries. An unnatural occurrence of androgens, male pattern hormones, appear in the ovaries for females. So androgens. Androgens are testosterone. It's a type of male pattern hormone. And this is where I want y'all to just kind of alarm yourselves a little bit. If somebody has true PCOS, what they're going to have is testosterone show up in their ovaries. And that is not a natural place for testosterone to be. Where is it supposed to be in women? Your adrenal glands, okay? Your kidneys are back here. And so your adrenal glands are right up here, little hats that sit on top of your kidneys. Testosterone's fine there. Where it's not fine for females is in the ovaries. This is why women get ovarian cysts. And in fact, if y'all look at the stats on this one today in 2024, unfortunately, there's a huge rise in women with ovarian cancer. A huge rise. So there's something going on where we're obtaining too much testosterone in our ovaries, and it's due to this dysregulation of FSH and LH for some reason. And I wish I could just be a researcher full time. That would be so much fun for me, because I would love to figure that out. Why is that happening? There's more ovarian cancer happening for young women than ever before. I'll give you a hypothesis if you want to hear it. My hypothesis is a lot of women are on synthetic hormones. Anybody in here take birth control? There is much more birth control being doled out to women today than ever before. This probably started in, our generation in the 70s, 80s. I wasn't born in the 70s, but I feel like I am sometimes in the 80s. So, where was I? So, birth control. When you have birth control in your body, that is synthetic hormones being pumped into your body. And so what's going to happen is you're going to have those dysregulations occur, and you can possibly start having some of the PCOS symptoms and some of the ovary issues due to that. And we'll talk about that further in just a second. Okay, then here's what I do want to say. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's hormone replacement therapy. Hormone replacement therapy is where you can actually go to a specialist, and you're usually going to get on some either form of a pill or a topical version of progesterone or estrogen. I say progesterone because most women are already estrogen dominant. So let's talk about this for a minute, and I'll tell you my personal story. Sophomores have heard this one already. But pay attention to your body, because women pay attention to their body a lot more than men. Sorry, Thomas, it's true. So, yeah. One time I decided after I married my husband that we decided together we wanted to try to have a baby together. I've got a son, he's got a daughter. They're perfect. They're both about to be 13 years old. They're the same age. And so took out my birth control. I have the IUD. Love that IUD because I don't have a cycle. Sorry, TMI. But I don't, and that's a beautiful thing. But what is that going to cost to me long term? I don't know yet, right? So if you enjoy the IUDs, what is that really going to do to us long term? If I study enough, I'm sure I'll figure it out. But anyways, so take it out. What happens when you take out an IUD after many years of having it in, like 10 years? Your hormones are going to go wacko. But you know what love does to your brain? You just forget about that part. And then I thought, oh man, okay, well, now I feel funny. So something weird's happening. And then all of a sudden my skin start doing something funny because I never break out. But all of a sudden I'm starting to get these little things. And ooh, I'm starting to see some hormonal hyperpigmentation on my upper lip. I'm like, oh man, this is exactly what I teach my students about. And I'm telling you, as someone that does have access to all the things, I was using all the things, not one thing would help them. So here we go. I'm feeling funny. Of course, still working on the skin stuff, whatever. I go to get a blood test done. And the blood test, she sits me down after the results came back and she said, well, she said, I just want to let you know that there's a big problem here, and here's the problem. You have estrogen and progesterone in your ovaries, right? You have those levels. You have to have a level, has to be a number. But my progesterone was 0, complete 0. Now, as soon as she said that, I remembered that that is a genetic disorder, so that's not going to happen to everybody, by the way. When you take out your birth control or quit using it. I remember my mother had those same issues when she was in her early 30s. So I just thought, okay, I shouldn't have done that, shouldn't have taken it out because it's just going to really make that genetic disorder just really be propelled. But I knew in that moment when your progesterone is 0, what can happen is it can spike up your estrogen. So this is why for women, other than me teaching y'all about ovarian cancer, this is also why a lot of women get breast cancer young. So if I would have not paid attention to that and dealt with it, then I probably could have caused myself to get breast cancer. So I would like to encourage y'all to not just take out long-term synthetic hormones out of your body. Don't stop using it for long periods of time. Why do y'all have balloons and flowers? That looks fun. What are y'all doing over there? Oh, yay. Oh, yay. So, where was I? Just be careful about doing that because you could cause yourself to get breast cancer potentially. So if your progesterone is 0, long story short, your estrogen spikes. So you don't want to do that. So for me, I just decided y'all are my children and that's it. And I don't want to have any more. So I put the birth control back in and that's what works for me, not for everybody. And I'm opening a daycare center. So now I can play with all the babies. So this works out. It just works out. Okay. All right. So as a review, this goes into endocrine glands in general. So let's look at this one. So pituitary gland, remember, is in your brain. It's the command center. Then I did not mention your pineal gland. Let's review that one really, really quickly. I've got a little bit more time with y'all, like 10 more minutes. So here we go. Your pineal gland. Your pineal gland. Look at what it says. That produces your body's melatonin. That's also in the brain too. So pituitary, pineal. Pineal looks like a little pine cone. Who in here has problems going to sleep at night? Okay, so I would like you to get your hormones tested, right? Because your pineal gland, you might not be producing enough melatonin. Of course, you can take synthetic melatonins and things of that sort, but you need to regulate your sleep patterns, and that's in your pineal gland. Then you've got your thyroid. We talked about that one already. Your thyroid helps control your growth, metabolism. Also regulates your protein synthesis. Then the parathyroid specifically, folks, that one's located back here. It's really connected to the thyroid. Thyroid here, parathyroid back here. The parathyroid is the one that specifically controls the body's calcium level. So we want to make sure calcium is there for bone health. Okay. Then this one I mentioned a lot in other lectures, so here it is now. So your skin, your epithelial tissue naturally has something known as Langerhans cells. I remember that one, I'm sure, from another lecture, Langerhans cells. Okay. Langerhans cells are the immune cells in your skin. It prevents against foreign invaders, so this is important. But then you also have to have something that produces immune cells inside your body too. So that's where your thymus comes into place. Everybody point to your chest. And your thymus grows in your chest cavity. And funny enough, literally in 2023, study from Harvard comes out. Apparently, doctors have been trying to remove the thymus gland because what it does is it grows and shrinks in later years. It works the best when you're a baby. So remember when you put your child in the daycare center for the first time and they get the ear infection and then all of a sudden they don't get ear infections anymore and all this kind of stuff. They're building your immune cells. Their T cells are on overdrive, building those T cells, those immune cells inside your body, produced in your chest cavity. The thought process for many years was that after that, your thymus gland is useless as an adult. And that is so the opposite of the truth. So if there was ever like a growth that wasn't necessarily cancer, doctors would say, oh, well, Crystal, we're going to send you to surgery. We're going to remove that thymus gland because you don't need it. You only need it when you're a kid. And that's not true. So what they were coming to find out, and Harvard did this study, just came out, like I said, in 2023, where they were removing the thymus gland, and guess what? People would die within like 5 to 10 years because it is still producing immune cells inside your body as an adult. It produces the most. I know you're shaking your head like, what is wrong with everybody? People in medicine don't know everything sometimes. It's disgusting. Malpractice, hello. So it does produce most of your T cells as a child, but my point is it still functions as an adult. So if y'all are ever in some of those weird circumstances where a doctor tells you, I want to perform surgery, we need to remove this thing, please rethink that. Go get another second opinion, and I can find that study for you if you need it, but that would be very specific to whatever it is you're going through. But yeah, you need your thymus gland. Do not remove it. All right? Then we said your pancreas, it does regulate your insulin levels, but it also regulates your digestive enzymes. So this is tied into you, your clients. If you're an adult, you are not going to have as much pancreatic enzymes to break down your food. So you're going to have a backup in your small intestine that could relate to heartburn and also IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So you do have to eat more fiber as an adult. Isn't that fun? You have to eat less sugar, less glucose meaning less sugar, and then gluten-free options, obviously, because any of that gluten, any of that glucose, it creates like a sticky, tacky lining inside your body. So if you have the lining and you go to eat broccoli, the broccoli is just going to be like, sayonara, sucker. I'm just going to not be absorbed whatsoever. I'm just going to go out through your stool, and I'm not going to absorb any nutrients. You will literally have a problem with absorbing nutrition. So this is why I always say stop it with the excessive sugar, stop with the excessive dairy, because dairy in the United States is pasteurized and treated with all these chemicals and everything, unfortunately. So switch over to your nut milks and things like that, because any kind of dairy will cause that glucose lining in your abdomen as well. Isn't this no fun? I always tell my son, please enjoy being young. Just eat it now. Do it now. I said, but I want you to remember that your mommy wants you to eat healthy, but this is your choice, and do whatever you have to do now because you can't do it forever. Okay. All right. Then your adrenal glands. Remember, we talked about a couple of different things. Mineralocorticoids, which produce your blood pressure balance. We talked about the glucocorticoids, which produce your cortisol levels, your stress hormones. And then we talked about the androgens that produce your body's natural testosterone. And when out of alignment, it can literally raise blood pressure, cause a lot of excessive stress, really wreak havoc on your skin, other things of that nature. So just keep in mind, your adrenal glands are something I would love for you to pay more attention to. And then your ovaries or testes. So this is important to pay attention to. And I mentioned a couple things for women as far as ovaries are concerned. You want to make sure you do have a level of estrogen and progesterone. Can't be zero. If one is zero, the other one's going to overcompensate and get higher. And oftentimes we are naturally, in today's world, overly estrogen dominant. Meaning that if you're drinking, I mean, here I am drinking my green juice, but what is it in? It's in a plastic bottle. So that's not good. BPA, all your plastics, those are terrible things. I mean, if you cook on Teflon pans, if you slice your vegetables on those little chopping boards that have plastics in it, I mean, do y'all know how much plastic that we're intaking? Our body's probably made of mostly plastic now. It's disgusting. All right. I'm just stressing everybody out. Okay. Yes. All right. But this is good information, it's great information. So thank y'all for listening to that. I hope you did learn some things. I'm going to go over a couple of little care plans because, y'all are estheticians. Let's talk about some fun things. When you do have this knowledge under your belt, I want you to then turn it into education for the client. So here's some education materials for your client. And y'all will save that other little handout for next week. And I'm going to have Miss Shannon do the oncology stuff with y'all after your break. So save that one for next week. But if y'all want to look at it, the other handout goes into comparison charts. You will just die when you see what's in the La Mer cream, that $300 cream. It's all terrible for you. So I want you to rethink your ingredients. So we'll get into that one too. But let's look at care plans for hormonal disorders. So hormonal hyperpigmentation on the face and neck. If y'all want to draw a little arrow from this and write down that one, hormonal hyperpigmentation, as a refresher, comes from the MSH, the melanocyte stimulating hormone, in your pituitary gland. Okay, so you can kind of let your client know, hey, I know where this is coming from. So treatment number one for this kind of client, and this is the thought process where they would be treating the hormones alongside you treating them. Okay, so there's that. I would suggest doing microchanneling with the hyperpigmentation protocol. If you don't know my hyperpigmentation protocol, I do recommend doing 4 passes microchanneling. I would do 2 passes with something hyaluronic acid based, and then actually putting in on the 3rd pass some kojic acid for brightening. Kojic acid for brightening at a very low percentage, but channeling kojic acid into the skin is fabulous. You could also take the Starlight Brightening Complex with the tranexamic acid in it, which is amazing for hyperpigmentation, and channel that into the skin too. But I would then pair that with the squalane, something like the lipid drops or whatever y'all like to put into the skin afterwards. So when you do channel in acids, I would say that's more of an advanced way to do things, but I would kind of sandwich it between your nourishers. Do y'all want to try that one? Yes, go ahead. The protocol, yes. So yes, I love that you like that. So the hyperpigmentation protocol for microchanneling, I would suggest 2 passes with something with hyaluronic acid in it. Okay, I would suggest the water drops or the collagen drops if y'all got that in your classroom, that sort of a thing. Okay, something with hyaluronic acid. 3rd pass, I would do kojic acid or tranexamic acid. Okay, kojic acid or tranexamic acid. So that would be what? The brightening molecules or the Starlight Brightening Complex. So totally pull the Starlight Brightening Complex, Crystal. Oh my gosh, that would be so great. And then sophomore teachers can do that too. And then the last pass, I would do the squalane, which would also be the lipid drops, because you need something fattier. Remember, squalane comes from the fat of olives. To channel that into the skin afterward would really prevent a lot of issues or any kind of irritation. I wouldn't say issues, but sometimes if you're channeling in acids for the first time, that can be a little bit tingly. So you're going to want to put something a little bit fattier in there afterwards just to kind of seal everything in. And oh man, I've tried this on some of my advanced students and they freaking love it, because some of them have hormonal hyperpigmentation. And I did this as a demonstration one time for little Susan, and I mean, transformative. Really, really, really good. Okay, so that would be my first treatment, believe it or not. Then treatment number 2, a method facial. Now, when y'all design your menus, I want you to get really creative and think about ways to create your own method facial. Our method facial includes a little bit of everything, so cold globes and peels and all that kind of stuff. So whatever the method facial would be for you, but I would incorporate a lactic peel 20%, a lactic peel 20%, because it's going to exfoliate yet hydrate, and you don't want to overdo it when it comes to hyperpigmentation, especially in the beginning. Okay. Then I would do that microchanneling hyperpigmentation protocol again, because that's a good one. And I want everybody in here to try it if you have hyperpigmentation. It even works for post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, not just hormonal. Not just hormonal. So post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation would be a great condition to work on that with as well. And in treatment 4, we're going to do a double exfoliation facial, which is pairing a microdermabrasion with a peel. That's a double exfoliation. So pair it with an enzyme. I don't want y'all to think that enzymes are just a baby peel. I hope y'all don't think that, because enzymes are so beneficial. But if you pair it with microdermabrasion, which sands down the skin, the glow that you're going to receive, and then you're not going to have any downtime. No downtime. So clients love that one. That's a go-to treatment really for anybody. And then treatment number 5, we're going to do that method facial with a Jesner's solution. And I remember mentioning last week, Crystal, that, if you want to microchannel in the Jesner on the body, I don't know if y'all ever had time to do that. Totally pull that out of your wheelhouse if you want to try that at some point. But I would do the method facial and Jesner on the face. But if you ever want to microchannel in a Jesner on the body, you can totally do that. And then the last one, treatment 6, microchanneling hydration protocol. So I love a good hydration protocol. So many people are dealing with dry skin, and this would be a perfect one to end on, right, if we're treating HP. But the hydration protocol, again, I do microchanneling a little bit different than others, and that's okay. There's several ways to bake a cake. I do it with 4 passes. So I do it the way it was originally taught when microchanneling came out, and now there's a couple different variations. Totally fine. Microchanneling hydration protocol would be 2 passes with hyaluronic acid, 2 passes with squalane. Okay, and if you want to get a little more anti-aging with it, you could throw in stem cells in there in the middle, little stem cells. Okay. All right, I'll do one more really quickly. So this is a hormonal acne and hirsutism hair growth for the upper lip and chin area care plan, because a lot of times, y'all will have clients that are dealing with skin conditions, but they're also dealing with hirsutism. And this is more of an advanced way to look at it. And to be honest with you, I did put together this one specifically for my advanced students. Let's actually begin with the hair growth portion at the bottom, because y'all are going to do waxing, but I want y'all to do waxing ethically. Meaning if they've got hypertrichosis, which is excessive hair growth, wax that all day, every day, okay? But if somebody has hirsutism, which is that terminal dark, thick hair, not vellus hair, on the upper lip, chin, and sometimes chest, that is hormonal. That's hirsutism. So I want you to recommend laser hair removal. And I was just telling someone, it might have been the night students, I was telling them, come try out the laser hair removal. We've just got these new arms on 2 of our lasers where I literally had Camry try this on me the other day, and it was cool to the touch. And let me tell you something, laser hair removal traditionally is a little bit hot and feels like a little rubber band snap. So it's actually less painful overall than waxing. But the new arms we have it wasn't even painful. I didn't even feel the snap. All I felt was cold. Like amazing, amazing stuff. So hair growth, laser hair removal. This is an advanced way to do things, because the old school way, doctors would tell you to get laser hair removal every 4 to 6 weeks. That is stupid, because if you know that the hair growth cycle is every 3 to 4 weeks, then when do they need to come back? They need to come back every 3 weeks when the anagen stage of hair growth is first budding out. So that is a beautiful thing. So you want to have clients come for 5 to 8 sessions every 3 weeks. But let me tell you what, this new laser hair removal stuff, I'm still going to do 5 to 8 sessions, but I just did 2 sessions of my underarm 3 weeks apart. I have no hair under there, none. I'm still going to do the treatments 3 weeks apart just to keep it gone, but none. Normally every time you do laser hair removal, you get a 20% reduction. You don't get full reduction. So I'm just blown away. Laser hair removal has totally excelled lately, because I first got into laser stuff, back in the early 2000s. So everything's just changed and it's different. But I would recommend no waxing on hirsutism on the upper lip and chin is my point. I would recommend them to someone for laser hair. And if you'll ever come to our cosmetic laser training class and you don't want to do the full advanced program, which I would recommend the whole thing, but the whole laser class is just a couple weeks. And then with that class, because we're a nationally accredited school and it's signed off by physicians, do y'all know y'all can get a laser license in the state of Georgia and North Carolina? You do have to be 21 for that laser license. You have to go through an accredited program to get that laser license, which we offer. And then guess what you can do? You can do light-based lasers, let's say in the state of Georgia. So not the ablative ones, but light-based lasers. So laser hair removal without a physician on site. So I would love for everybody to learn how to do laser hair removal, move to Georgia, get that laser license, and open a laser hair removal clinic. Oh my God, I'm giving y'all some ideas. Please go do it. All right, so let's look at the skincare one, and then we're going to pause for your break. So, a Radiance Reset Facial, which is a facial plus appeal. This would be beautiful for hormonal acne, starting them with a 15% salicylic peel. Treatment number 2, and I would say do this in, about 2 or 3 week intervals to be relatively aggressive. Usually people with acne want to be aggressive to get it gone. So, moving up to the salicylic 30% peel on that one. And then treatment number 3, microchanneling acne protocol. Okay, and I think the protocol is actually on the end of your slideshow too. Acne protocol, I would do an HA serum for 2 passes. Then I would do salicylic acid. Salicylic acid. Okay, channel that into the skin. Amazing. You're going to do that for less than 10%. So it's got to be less than 10%. I would not take a 15% salicylic or 30% salicylic and channel that into the skin. That'd be a little too much. So anything less than 10%. And then I would finish off with a little bit of the squalane, so something that's fattier like the lipid drops. Okay. Then let's do the method facial. So that one's going to incorporate the hydrodermabrasion with a little bit of the salicylic 30%. So really, really good. I love salicylic because you can't overprocess someone with salicylic. Remember, it works from the top down and eats away at dirt and debris. So it feels a little tingly. You're going to see some of that crystallization on the skin, but you can't ever overprocess someone because it's a BHA. It's not an AHA. So this is fantastic for acne, also good for redness, All right, then treatment number 5 always needs to be, or the next to last one anyways, always needs to be your most aggressive one. So method facial plus a Jesner. With a Jesner peel, and here's the thing, I was telling one of our medical providers, because they were asking me about these plans, I said, well, listen, the plan can change, right? The plan can change. So if I'm giving someone a plan, that's not to say we got to stick with the plan. So if their skin is sensitized, they're not ready for a Jesner, we're not going to do that Jesner. Maybe we'll extend it out to 6 to 8 treatments. Maybe we'll just move to a different service altogether, but it gives them an idea of what to do, but do what is safe for the client in that moment. Because remember, professional judgment is what I want you to use. But the Jesner is so good. Now, what I will say about a Jesner solution is y'all can make this really aggressive. One time, Sade, this girl that was one of my students years ago, she moved to Florida. Love her so much. I did 6 layers of a Jesner on her. She freaking loved it. You can layer up Jesners as much as you possibly can. Just understand that it's going to turn the skin kind of that whitish cast. It's going to be not crystallization, but it's going to be frosting. And then that's really good for people that do have hyperpigmentation, of course, the acne and everything like that, but you need to ease them into it. And remember, Jesner self-neutralize. So that's the key to that one. You can layer that one up. So don't be scared with chemical peels. You're going to get to chemical peel week. I want to say the sophomores, y'all are doing that next week. So don't be scared. Do the layered peels. And then treatment 6, microchanneling with the acne protocol again. I mean, this would be so amazing. So I think the theme here to take away, and then we're going to wrap this up, is going backwards. Hormonal anything, hyperpigmentation specifically, if you channel in those lighteners and brighteners, that is very impactful for those clients dealing with those issues because they have underlying hormonal stuff going on. That would be very helpful to their skin. And then for the hormonal acne, if you channel in your BHA, okay, I would never channel in any AHAs particularly. Okay, specifically glycolic. Let's just say that. I would not channel in lactic or glycolic. Kojic, yes. But I would take that BHA, channel that into the skin, and that's going to help those clients a ton. But remember, you cannot microchannel if somebody has active acne. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is going to be with the assumption that y'all have done extractions to alleviate some of those concerns, and then you can do it. Or if you're channeling and you do decide to go over acne, this is kind of an advanced thing. I would say if it's just cystic acne, I would take that needle and only tap over those 1 things, and then needle goes in the sharps container. I would not drag that around the whole face. So you can be a little bit more concentrated if you're comfortable doing that. Okay. Did y'all learn some good stuff this morning? Yes. Okay. If y'all will come back at 10:45. Thank y'all so very much.